Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, a Bundesliga podcast from the Football Grad Network. I'm your host, Bryce Dunn. I'm back again after being off ill. It's good to be back, may I say. But joining me, as always, when I'm on here, is Chris Williams. Chris, how are you? You've done quite a bit of travelling this last few days.
I wouldn't say quite a bit, Bryce. I've flown to Germany and back, but these days it makes me sound really old. But it's only an hour, so it's an hour hop. Glasgow to, it was Mulhouse in France, and then drove to Freiburg for the night, and then up to Stuttgart for Stuttgart Bayern, and then a little visit to Switzerland before I flew home on Sunday. So, yeah, it's not lots of travelling, nowhere near as much as Manu.
Yeah, do you have any money left after being a day in Switzerland?
No. So we went there. If you've never been to Switzerland, it's beautiful, but eat before you cross the border because 4 bratwursts and some chips, which you pay about €3 each in Germany for, they were £8.50 each. So, like, I don't understand how people survive in Switzerland, because it's saying something when the equivalent of a £5 note is a coin. So, that's it. The lowest you could get out of the cash machine was 50 francs.
Yeah, that's rough. I ate at FC Basel, and that was about it when I was there.
I ate at Mulhouse Airport in the end.
Yeah, that's rough.
I think we've covered a complaining about the economy and the cost, I suppose, over in Switzerland now. But yes, that other voice joining Chris and I is Manu Veth, as you probably guessed. Manu, how's your weekend been?
Yeah, surprisingly quiet. I mean, I took this weekend off. I didn't go to any games. Instead, I just assisted whatever the work that Chris was doing in Stuttgart. It was kind of nice. Watched the conference on television on Sky. Very enjoyable experience, I have to say. Being at home on a warm couch rather than a cold stadium for one weekend was really nice. So as probably most listeners know, and I think I've done now 10 cities in 12 days over the last week or so. So yeah, it was nice just being in Munich.
Good. I'm glad that you enjoyed, but it's not just the three of us on the podcast today. And no, it's not John either. We've actually got another rather special guest. We've got Matze Kehl on with us. Welcome onto the podcast, Matze. For anyone that doesn't quite know who you are or what you do, could you possibly explain for us?
Hey guys. Yeah, I'm Matze and I work pretty close with Hoffenheim, the Bundesliga club we will, I think, talk about like in the podcast. Yeah, my last working day was on Friday, the press conference with the coach of Hoffenheim. And yeah, I think I can tell you some news about it.
Very exciting, eh? We're definitely going to have you on a few times this coming season, I would imagine. But yeah, guys, let's kick it off. I suppose one of the main talks will be about coaches, but let's not just start with that. Let's start with a man that no doubt shall be talked about in January, no matter what his situation is, and that's Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. He always seems to be linked with every club, especially in England and everywhere else. But it seems like, Manu, there's been a bit of a deal to keep him at Dortmund a little longer.
The famous slip, Michael Zorc's famous slip on the television interview, right, Chris? Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang apparently extended his contract until 2021. His previous contract was until 2020, and he got a spike in his yearly salary. So I guess he can buy an extra Lamborghini every year. So that's good for him. I think, I mean, Chris, you probably know a bit more about this than I do, but I think, we all kind of expected that there would be huge kind of transfer speculations over January, and then instead this bomb kind of exploded out of nowhere. And I from my feeling now is that Aubameyang is not going to go anywhere over January.
No, and I'm wondering how much of it was a slip, because across Europe his future was being discussed. In Spain in the press, over here in England in the press. Apparently Everton were expected to make a £60 million bid for him. That's, I didn't know if that's before or after Diego Simeone was supposed to come in. But anyway, they've got Sam Allardyce and now they won't have a striker. So I don't know how much of it is a slip, because I don't think Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's transfer suspects that comes around every window that it seems to be help the club at all. So maybe it wasn't so much of a mistake. It's finally been put to bed now and the player came out. But by all accounts, it was signed a few weeks ago. And Manuel, we chatted, in fact, Bryce, we chatted as well, didn't we? We all chatted in our WhatsApp group. It was about 3-4 weeks ago that this was going to happen, but you can never quite say things, and we don't want to upset any Bundesliga clubs on here. And as we're going to chat about Hoffenheim, I already upset Julian Nagelsmann earlier this season, so I don't want to go around upsetting any other clubs.
Oh, that's what we have Matze for. He can upset Julian Nagelsmann. It's not like he has to deal with him.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Julian Nagelsmann, he's everyone's discussing about his future. He's doing a good job at Hoffenheim, and he's one of the big reasons Hoffenheim is on the top, not on the top, but I think on the 5th or 6th place on the league table. And now the situation in Dortmund is very difficult, because the contract of the actual coach is limited until the summer, and everyone talks about who's coming after him.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. I mean, it would be massive shoes to fill, and I suppose we will get onto that further. Let's just stick with Aubameyang for the meantime. Mats, how big an achievement is this for not just Dortmund to hold on to him, but for the Bundesliga to hold on to him as well? I mean, he's a rather large figure in the footballing world.
Yeah, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has proved that he is one of the big strikers, not in Germany, but also like in the European, in the Champions League, for example, because he scored in big games. And after Robert Lewandowski, he's the second big striker in Germany, I think. And I think Dortmund can be lucky to extend his contract, although he's like a diva in Dortmund, you can say, because his performances are sometimes very good. He scores like 3 or 4 goals, but then you don't see him in like 2 games at all.
It's a bit of a mute point right now in Dortmund. I feel that for a long time they sort of respected all his behavior, right? And then now I think this season really under Bosz it escalated a little bit, and I feel like that they don't really the fans are not as accepting anymore as they used to be.
Yeah, I think I go with you in that point, because Aubameyang was not like the first defender on the striking line, which is essential for the Dortmund play. So on the Bosz era, on the first games when they were successful, Aubameyang was one of the most important players who scores, but the defense balance, if you can say it like that, has also to do with his performances, which were in that case not on top.
And Chris, would you agree with what Manu said, that this is possibly a contract that would see Aubameyang stay in Dortmund for the rest of his playing career?
Yeah, it's one of two things, isn't it? It's either he's not going anywhere, or there's something in there in that contract that gives him a way out. We've seen that with players before, signing contracts and then moving on the next window for maybe slightly less of a fee, or if a certain club comes in for them, they're required to be allowed to make contact with that club. So for this, though, because of his age, and he may, I mean, if we look at some of the press that we saw earlier on this season, so some of the German press particularly, is that he's issued his agent to go and find him a club, and then all of a sudden he's signing a contract. So either he's happy in Dortmund or he can't find another club. So he's going to stay there until someone from China comes in with stupid money in the summer, and maybe that's written into his contract. Who knows? But on the outside, maybe now Peter Bosz has gone, Aubameyang feels a little bit happier that he is ready to commit to stay there. I don't think it's any surprise that his dip in form came with the change of manager. He's also, he wasn't turning up for training. He's a bit petulant. Diva's the right word. It is the right word for him. I know plenty of people in Dortmund, and that's exactly how they would describe him, as a diva. And I think Manu's right. When he's scoring 3-4 goals a game, or 3-4 goals every other game, people are happy. But when you're missing gilt-edged chances and your team's getting beaten, you haven't won at home in 4 or 5 games, then it becomes a bit of a problem. But I think now with Peter Stöger in charge, it might have turned a little bit, and it seems a happier place. Although they still looked a bit iffy on the weekend, they got that win, which is the most important thing. And maybe Aubameyang's a little happier. I think we'll see, not this window, but we'll see in the summer. If there's no talk of him going anywhere in the summer, then I think the contract extension's him staying at Dortmund.
I think it was interesting, Chris, when he missed that chance against Hoffenheim. We're going to get to talk about Hoffenheim in a moment, but when he missed that chance to make it 3-1, there was a big smile on his face when he realized that he messed up. You saw it in the replays quite well, and I think that already shows that there's a bit of a mood change. I think Aubameyang is quite happy with Peter Stöger coming in as the coach right now. Peter Stöger, of course, dealt with another diva in Anthony Modeste at Köln, so maybe he's quite used with that sort of striker, right? So I have a sense that Aubameyang could be the big winner of this coaching change. And
I think we know how good a man manager Peter Stöger is. I mean, you only have to look at what he said to Julian Nagelsmann before the start of the game. He's reported to have said to him, make sure you don't sit on the wrong bench. So that's the sort of man he is. That's the sort of interaction he has with fellow coaches as well as players. So if Aubameyang needs a little bit of stroking to get him going, I think Peter Stöger's the right man.
And Manu, talking about transfers, it looks like Dortmund have brought in a young Argentine forward. Who exactly is this, and what do we know about him?
Well, we know about Maximiliano Romero. We know quite a bit about him because of Nico, right? Our man in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. We thought originally this would go to Stuttgart, then it was PSV, and now it appears that Dortmund have done a last-minute offer for him. And it's really quite simple. Felix Saarfield, the club where he is, want to sell him, and basically the highest bidder is gonna get him. Stuttgart bid 10 million. PSV now seem to have won the race for 12, and I guess Dortmund went in and bid a little bit more, and this is $12 million. So I'm not quite sure what the exchange rate is. So it's a bit less, so around 10 million euros, I guess. And I guess Dortmund bid a little bit more than PSV did, and Bild is saying the deal is done. I hear from quite a few other sources when we're in Dortmund that it looks likely to be done, but it seems to happen that usually around the time we're almost done with our podcast, right, that we get a push notification from somewhere or someone saying that it's done.
We'll find out in an hour.
We'll find out, yeah, exactly. We'll find out probably towards the end of the podcast. But it looks promising, and we have a great article on him on fußballstadt.com, and he looks like a really promising player, and he's 18. Although they signed Alexander Isak he's another 18-year-old. I'm not sure, do they really need another young striker? But I guess can never have enough depth up front.
Well, before we get to Matze, who I know is very eager to talk about Julian Nagelsmann with us, let's just talk a little bit about Peter Stöger. Chris, what's been the main difference since Stöger's come in? I mean, we've seen 2 wins on the bounce from him as soon as he's come in. There's always going to be that new manager bounce at clubs. And I mean, they seem to be experiencing that. But what else does he bring to his side?
If I was going to be really flippant and pedantic, I'd say he's playing players in the right position, and he's trusting players to do a job. I mean, the turnaround of Julian Weigl has been crucial to Dortmund's turnaround. Also, the back line looks a lot better, so maybe he's come in. He's not had to change the players. He's just had to change the way they've played. So maybe they've just gone back to the way that they know they can play before. Peter Bosz tried to change a lot. He changed the training routines. He changed the way Dortmund play. As in, he tried to change their blueprint, and he said in his opening press conference it might take a while, and it looked okay early on, but they didn't really have a substantial challenge, and when they started to get a decent challenge, then obviously the results faded rapidly, especially in the Champions League. So I think Peter Stöger's come in and just gone back to basic. That's a real football cliche, I'm afraid, Bryce, but on this, I think that's what he's done. He's come in, and he's changed the way. He's made Julian Weigl that crucial defensive midfielder, and he has changed the shape slightly, but we saw him do that at Cologne last season. He didn't play 4-3-3 constantly, as in Bosz did. So I think you mentioned quite a while ago, had Bosz been found out? That's probably a little harsh thing to say, but maybe the system had been found out. Peter Stöger's more of a German manager, and like the way Julian Nagelsmann is, you never know what formation he's going to play from week to week, or who's going to play in what position. So that gives you the element of surprise. I think that's what Peter Stöger's brought back to Dortmund.
I think the shackles are off too, Chris. With Julian Weigl, he basically told him to play the way he feels comfortable to play, right? And with Bosz expected him to play a certain line further up. He didn't allow him to have quite that roaming kind of nature in midfield. And I think Weigl felt limited by that quite a bit. And when you basically shut down your engine, then you have a huge problem. And I think it worked quite well until Weigl came back and was back to fitness, right? And then all of a sudden it kind of fell apart on him because he tried to reintegrate Weigl, and then Weigl didn't feel comfortable in that system. And now I think Peter Stöger just basically said to Weigl, play your game as you always have. Boom, job done. And Weigl has been crucial in the last two games.
And Matze, if we just go to you, I mean, obviously you're based over in Germany. I mean, firstly, how is Peter Stöger perceived over in Germany? But also, was there much of a shock when he was appointed? Obviously, being at Cologne, he'd done a fantastic job, but then this season things didn't quite go right for him, and he failed to get a win there. I mean, there's many people speaking to Manuel, Chris, and I that seem to struggle to understand that how a manager that was winless managed to get one of the biggest jobs then in the league.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons was that Aki Watzke, the boss of Dortmund, spoke to Peter Stöger long before he started his job in Dortmund right now. They spoke, I think, in the summer break before Peter Bosz came in for Dortmund to coach. So he has a feeling about the ideas of Peter Stöger even before this situation, because Peter Stöger was coaching Cologne for 4 years very successfully. And I think that was the reason to hire him for the job in Dortmund.
Hi, this is Rachel Fisher.
And this is Desi Jenikin.
And we host the Hollywood Crime Scene podcast. We're really excited to tell you about the best Christmas ever on AMC+, where every day feels like Christmas morning.
It's the holiday season, and that means it's time to see old friends like Buddy the Elf, Heat Miser, and Clark Griswold. Plus, you get a stocking stuffed with highly acclaimed AMC series like The Walking Dead and Mad Men, new series like Gangs of London and The Walking Dead World Beyond. They're all here on AMC+.
So celebrate the best Christmas ever, anytime, anywhere. AMC Plus is the gift that keeps on giving all year long. Sign up today at amcplus.com. AMC Plus, only the good stuff.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Yeah, and I think that's something that Watzke said too in the press conference, right? Matze, that one of the big things that he pointed out is that we didn't hire Stöger for what he's done over the last 4 months, but what he's done over the last 4 years.
Exactly. Because Peter Stöger is also a coach who can understand players, and Dortmund was also in a situation where there was a huge problem in psychological reasons because the team has forgot to win, if you can say it like that. They were like almost 2 months without a win. And then, of course, your mind starts to think. And yeah, Peter Stöger is a guy who's very calm in his personality, and he know how to moderate like such a situation.
He's very honest too. This is one thing that I find really refreshing about him. When you see the interviews afterwards and they ask him, it's like, well, why did you take this job? Didn't you have any doubts? And he's like, well, I'm a coach. And this is an opportunity that comes along maybe once in a lifetime. And it's all about taking those opportunities, right? I think it's just so disarming. And I think at the same time, he always says, like, look, I was at a really, in German, we like to use the word geil, right? I was at a really amazing club for 4 years with Köln, but this is an opportunity I couldn't pass up.
Exactly. And also, the situation for Dortmund was difficult because they don't change coaches during the seasons. I think the last time was 2007 or 2005 with Bert van Marwijk, so long ago. And now they need someone for right now. And of course, to find a coach during the season is very difficult, and Peter Stöger was, from the first minute of the conversations, as Aki Watzke said, like, he was in for it. And I think for both sides, for Borussia Dortmund in that situation, and for Peter Stöger in his situation, it was a win-win for both.
Yeah, I would go along with that.
And Chris, looking ahead, Stöger will be taking his Dortmund side all the way over to Munich midweek, Wednesday night. Bayern Munich will face Borussia Dortmund in the DFB Pokal. How do you see that game going? I mean, Bayern did win at the weekend, but narrowly against Stuttgart, which actually takes them to 11 points clear the top of the league. But do you think that it's going to be a little bit different compared to when the teams faced each other previously in the league?
Yeah, I think it'll be a completely different game. Dortmund will have the tail between, the wind beneath their sails, and they'll be pushing on. And I was at Stuttgart on Saturday, and Bayern didn't look that solid, to be honest. They do what they did very well, which was soak up a load of pressure and then score. And then, a wonderful penalty save at the end. And it was a really good goal by Thomas Muller, and we'll get to that in a bit. But Stuttgart had plenty of chances to score. And I feel if the likes of Pulisic, Kagawa, especially how he's playing at the minute, Yarmolenko, Aubameyang, Guerrero as well, and Julian Weigl, if that was Dortmund playing Bayern on Saturday at the Westfalenstadion, I think it could have been 2 or 3-1 to Dortmund. That's how fragile I think Bayern were looking. I don't think the free kick was a free kick where they got the goal from, and then they rode their luck at the end with the penalty save. So I think they're beatable at the moment. But it's the game in Germany. It's the big game. It's a Klassiker. So maybe form goes out the window a little. They'll be wanting a little bit of revenge from last season, from the semi-final where Dortmund were behind and then they came back fantastically, and then obviously they went on to win the trophy and they're the champions. So Bayern will be looking to put them out. It's got all the ingredients of a good game, this has. But I definitely think Bayern are beatable at the moment if they come across the right side.
I think Bayern are really tired, Chris. I was at the Köln game, of course, on Wednesday. Big shout out, by the way, to Sport 1 for having me. I was at the VIP box, at the Sport 1 VIP box, so I want to give a big shout out to Colin who arranged it all. If you're listening, thanks again. But yeah, I thought that they were very beatable in that game too, despite their 80 whatever percentage ball possession that they had. But I think they only recorded 1 or 2 shots on goal overall, and one of them was of course in. And Köln actually had a chance towards the end of the match to make it 1-1. And I have a feeling that Bayern are very tired right now. It's just a sense that the side is, they've gone through this emotional high with the coaching change, and right now they're kind of trying to drag themselves into the winter break a little bit, right? Which is understandable because it was a pretty emotional time. And I mean, you can say it's a strength to win all your games 1-0 because it was 3 games in a row now that they won 1-0. But on the other hand, the sides that they beat 1-0 were Köln, Frankfurt, and Stuttgart, right? So these are not the biggest sides in Germany. And it kind of shows you that there is something is a little bit going on. But on the other hand, this is a game where everyone on the pitch knows that after those 90 minutes are done, you have 4 weeks of Christmas holidays. Well, I guess maybe 1 week, but you have a break. And I think that will change everything when it comes to the complexion of that game.
And Mats, what about you? Do you agree with the boys that this might be an opportunity for Borussia Dortmund to get one over on their rivals?
If you ask me like that, I think Dortmund, although they have now 2 wins in a row with the new coach Peter Stöger, they are also not like on top of their level as they were last season. So if you watch the game against Hoffenheim, if you watch the game against Mainz, you also see that Dortmund is beatable as well. So I think both clubs are not on their top level right now when they go on the match on Wednesday. But yeah, I agree with the guys that Bayern Munich's last appearances in the league were not like they were when they were with Jupp Heynckes in the first games. So it could be very close because also Bayern Munich is not sure how the new coach will show up with Dortmund. But yeah, I'm very curious about the game, and I think it's going to be tight.
It'll be fascinating either way, I think, and definitely advise anybody to tune in and check that one out. But let's talk about the coaches. We've kind of touched on them a little bit. We've touched on Stöger, haven't we? But I feel that obviously with his appointment, many were saying that it would be just until the end of the season. And then some were pointing in the direction of Julian Nagelsmann as if he was going to come in then. Manu, it seems like Stöger's now being suggested as being a long-term replacement. Is that right?
Whoa. No. I don't think that's suggested at all. No. Dortmund in their press conference, we have to remember it's a stock holding company, right? So whatever they decide to do, they have to give out an ad hoc statement to basically warn everyone who's trading Dortmund stock. So that makes it already quite different when it comes to any kind of rumors. So in the press conference, Aki Watzke said, well, we don't have a new coach in the summer yet. Peter Stöger's contract is until the summer. And then we'll see. And then he's asked, well, what about Stöger? Does he have a chance to stay on after the summer? And he said, we have all the options open. But I think it's such an open secret that Borussia Dortmund won Julian Nagelsmann, right? And I think the tricky part really is that they can't say it because of the way Dortmund are structured as a company. They can't engage in rumors like, our friend Uli Hoeneß likes to do, right? It's just not possible the same way. But I think, and I mean, we have Matze on for this, but I think everyone in Germany kind of knows that they really want Julian Nagelsmann as the coach in the summer. I think the only danger is now, and this is something maybe that we should discuss ahead of time. What happens now, boys, if Stöger takes the side, he wins on Wednesday, he wins, let's say, 15 out of the 17 games towards the end of the season, maybe the Europa League as well. It's going to be pretty tough to make any kind of changes. So that's actually something that I've been really wondering about. And I personally feel that Peter Stöger could be the perfect fit for this Dortmund team. Kind of curious to hear your opinion on this, Chris, because you're maybe a little closer to Dortmund than I am at times. But I don't know, when I get to sense his interviews, his style, what happens if he's successful? What happens if he wins a ton of games?
Yeah, he's certainly the character that the guys in the stands have been missing since Klopp left. So we all know what the character that Thomas Tuchel was. Excellent coach, but quite reserved, very quietly spoken, very much a football academic, if we can call him that. And I think people in Dortmund want not Jurgen Klopp, but they want a Jurgen Klopp style. And I think Peter Stöger has that. He's got that. We call it over in the UK the common touch, which sounds terrible because it actually means a lot nicer than it is. So he's got the ability to speak to, the bosses, the very high bosses. So he can speak to Watzke, he can speak to Zorc on a very professional level, but then he can go and converse with the guy in the street about football over a pint. And that's the type of coach that they would like in Dortmund. And I think that's what Peter Stöger has. He has that ability. And you're quite right, Manu. If he goes and wins, 15 of the remaining 17 games, especially on the next coming couple of days, so they beat Bayern, and then they go on and do remarkably well in the Europa League. And if they were to win that, obviously that's automatic qualification for the Champions League. And they do quite well in the league themselves, in the Bundesliga, then they would have a massive decision to make. And I think everybody wants a piece of Julian Nagelsmann because of what a revolutionary coach he is. And he's so young, so he's only 30, but the methods he uses are out there on his own, I think. And he's regarded throughout the whole of Europe for being someone who's such a forward thinker. And I would probably put him on a pedestal. The way he looks at football and the way he looks at tactics and the way he looks at player management and how to get the best out of his players, I would put him on the same sort of trajectory as Pep Guardiola, and the way he interacts with his players and the passion he has and what he expects tactically out of them. Not saying he's as good as Pep Guardiola now. I'm saying that that's where he could get to with his vision. And obviously a club like Dortmund and a club like Bayern are going to want a piece of that because, he's a young German coach. And potentially, he can have another 40 years in the game. This is incredible. He could have another 40 years of high-level management. Now, who in their right mind wouldn't want that? I'm sure Borussia Dortmund would, and I'm sure Bayern Munich would like a piece of that in the future, because that's a lot of coaching and management time. So I can see why they would want him for that. But I don't know. Peter Stöger, if he can get the results, he's certainly the character that can galvanise everybody in Dortmund, similar to the way that Jurgen Klopp did.
Yeah, I guess the next question is, right, can Dortmund get Julian Nagelsmann? I think we all know they want to, but can they actually do it? I think that's a really big question.
I think it is a big question, and I thought Matze is the perfect person to answer that. His closeness to Hoffenheim, and he'll have the vibe of the entire city and the club on that.
Well, the floor is yours, Matze.
Yeah, I think the situation is very difficult, as you guys said before, because when Peter Stöger got a ton of wins, then the Dortmund bosses have a huge decision to make. But as you said, the name Julian Nagelsmann is present in Dortmund, but Julian Nagelsmann is not in the position to choose because he has a contract until 2021 in Hoffenheim, and Hoffenheim knows what he has on Julian Nagelsmann, and on the other side, Julian Nagelsmann knows what he has on Hoffenheim. The contract runs until 2021, and I think he can escape from the contract earliest in 2019. So Hoffenheim has the big challenge now to find a coach who can coach Hoffenheim after Julian Nagelsmann. And yeah, that will be a big question in the next month, in the next maybe for also the next season.
And Matze, how difficult would it be for Hoffenheim to replace somebody like Julian Nagelsmann when he goes? I mean, is there even anyone that comes to your mind that you think could possibly fill those boots?
I think it's very difficult because Julian Nagelsmann came to the club at 2010. He coaches the U17. He coaches the U19 team of Hoffenheim. He was the co-coach on the first team when they survived the relegation in 2012 and 13 in Dortmund. And yeah, he knows how to develop the team. When he was the coach for the first team in 2016, the club in the first league was about to go down into the second league. I think nobody in this situation thought of that Hoffenheim will survive the season in the first league. Huub Stevens, the Dutch coach, was before Julian Nagelsmann, and from the sportive perspective, the team was down. And then a 28 young old coach was coming to Hoffenheim, and they started to play football. He reaches the young guys. He developed a new tactical system, and the team was not only like winning games, but you can see from the tactical perspective that they was growing something. And the reason for that was actually Julian Nagelsmann. And although he's still a young guy, I think he's 30 years old, he's not a young coach in this way, because he started coaching when his player career was finished. He's coaching now for 9 years. Although he's 30, he has a lot of experience in coaching. And yeah, I think he knows what he has on Hoffenheim, because Hoffenheim has given him the opportunity to coach on top level. And yeah, and also Hoffenheim knows what Julian Nagelsmann means to the club. And yeah, he knows how to deal with the situation of Hoffenheim, that they don't have the highest budget in Bundesliga. He knows how to deal with the patron Dietmar Hopp, who's present all around Hoffenheim, because he made the club growing up. He gave the money for it, and he installed the managers and all the staff in Hoffenheim. And you have to deal with him. Julian Nagelsmann know how to do. He know the players, because he started to coach in U17, U19. So a lot of players who are playing in Hoffenheim, he knows from the beginning on. And the person or the coach who has to coach after Julian Nagelsmann, the team has a huge challenge to do. And yeah, Hansi Flick, the sports board in Hoffenheim, has now the big exercise to find someone who's coming after Julian Nagelsmann. But if you ask me honestly, who comes to my mind who can come after Julian Nagelsmann, to be honest, I have no idea.
It's some pretty big shoes to fill. I mean, you say it quite well. It's because the way everything is set up right now, Julian Nagelsmann is the strong man at that club, right? He has such a strong position at Hoffenheim. And at the same time, we chatted a little bit before this podcast, Matze, and you said he's very loyal. I think that will be something that will come. It will be play a huge amount into this potential transfer next summer. Because I think if Hopp says no in the summer of 2018, I think Nagelsmann will accept that, right?
I go with that, yeah. Because Julian Nagelsmann, as I said, knows what he has in Hoffenheim. And of course, his ambitions are higher than Hoffenheim's can actually be, because he knows Hoffenheim can play like maximum for Europa League or Champions League qualification. And Julian Nagelsmann is a coach who always wants the maximum. You can see it in his eyes. You can see how he reacts, and after defeats, he wants to do the next step. But on the other hand, he knows that Hoffenheim has given him the opportunity to coach on top level. And he has signed the contract for 2021. And I think if it comes to the situation that Hoffenheim has no one following Julian Nagelsmann, or no perfect solution after coming Julian Nagelsmann, I think Julian Nagelsmann is not the coach who will try to get out in a dirty way, as like players do sometimes to get out of contracts. I think Julian Nagelsmann is not the guy who for those reactions. I think if the club says, Julian, you have to stay at least until 2019, I think he has to accept that, and he will accept that, and will coach on in Hoffenheim.
I think
it's pretty.
I think what he has is he's got this unenviable position of being 30. So if he gets told no, you've got to wait. Even if he gets told no, you've got to wait 20 years before you can go to Bayern or Dortmund. That would still make him 50, which is an average age for a manager. So he's got all this time, and you are not a coach as good as Julian Nagelsmann that just falls away overnight. So it's not like next season we're going to be like, oh, what happened to him? Because, you know, he's really good for a couple of seasons, and then all of a sudden his tactics and his tactical knowledge and the way he implements a game has just fallen right off. I don't think that's going to happen. So if he gets told, oh yeah, you've got to wait 2, or even if he's told no, you'll see out your contract, I'm sure he'll be quite okay about that, because that would make him 33, and he'd be like, well, I'll just go to Bayern, or I'll just go to Dortmund when I'm 33 or 34. And at the moment, the world is his oyster, because if he went to Dortmund and he did very well at Dortmund, and he stayed there for 4 or 5 years, maybe even 6, let's say, and then he's 40, after he's been told he's got to stay at Hoffenheim for a bit, then he's 40 years old, and he could go on to an even bigger job in, I don't know, maybe one of the massive Spanish giants, or a team like that. So I think he will be, if someone says you've got to wait 2 years, I think he'll be quite cool with that, because he's got youth on his side, which a lot of managers and head coaches don't have.
Yeah, I would go along with that, Chris. I think that is the thing. I think too that Dortmund are actually in a okay position, because if that happens, then they have Peter Stöger, and that's not a bad second option at all. So I think that right now all sides are sort of eyeing each other and see like, okay, well, what's going to happen next? Everyone is kind of like in a good position right now, so it'd be an interesting one to follow. I could see this going down in 2019 instead of next summer. I'm kind of with Matze. I don't know. It's just, from what I see with the no exit clause next summer, I find it difficult to imagine that Dortmund get the man right away.
Yeah, but it also stays a topic for as long as Julian Nagelsmann don't clarify his commitment to Hoffenheim, because he had the opportunity to say, I will stay until minimum 2019, but he always rescues himself, like in sentence like, oh, it's cool to hear that there are big clubs interested in me. It's not a bad thing that they are interested in me. Instead of saying, yeah, I will stay in Hoffenheim for at least one season. That actually says that, okay, there's something he don't want to talk about. That's my personal feeling about it.
Well, I'm sure there's talks. I mean, Watzke's agent is the same agent than Julian Nagelsmann's agent, right? I'm pretty sure there's an open line of communication at all times.
Yeah, of course. As you said, the agent is the same, and there were talks before. Also before Peter Stöger was introduced in Dortmund, there was the try for Julian Nagelsmann, but in this situation, because he is a loyal guy, he said, I will not leave the club in the winter, and yeah.
Mats, may I just ask that, if he's being a bit blasé about his future, I mean, that can come down to many different reasons, but if things go well for him the rest of the season, which there's no reason why they shouldn't, they're doing very well at the moment, so it's a very close top 7 there. Where do you think he would prefer to go if the likes of Bayern and Dortmund both come and knocking in the summer? Has he got any particular tie to either side that would draw him to there?
I think Julian Nagelsmann also sees the situation in Hoffenheim, which will maybe change in the summer, because you have like players like Serge Gnabry, who will go to Bayern Munich for sure. You have Mark Uth, who is interested in Gladbach. So the clubs Gladbach, Schalke, and also Dortmund are interested in him. You have young players like Demir Bay or Amiri, who are also on the list of like top teams. So you don't actually know what your sportive material, if you should say it like that, is in Hoffenheim like next season. And when you ask me which one of the big clubs are like preferable for him, Julian Nagelsmann is born near Munich, so he's grown up with the culture. He already said to us journalists in the press conference, and for everybody to notice, that he's started to build up his new apartment in the Bavarian area. So his private life is taking place also in Munich. So that will be a reason maybe for choosing the club. Also, as we all know, Bayern Munich, coaching Bayern Munich is one of the biggest jobs you can have as a coach. So he is still 30, so he has all the time to do that in the future. But yeah, Dortmund is in a difficult situation because they fired the successful coach Thomas Tuchel, and now we have the situation that Peter Stöger has had a good start, and if he is successful in the next games after the winter, then Dortmund is again in the situation to send away a successful coach, and yeah.
That is the one I struggle with the most, Matze. That's the point I'm struggling with the most. I just can't see that happening.
Yeah, so I'm curious about Peter Stöger's performance in Dortmund as it goes on, but yeah, Julian Nagelsmann has all the time, as Chris already said, has all the time to coach the big clubs in Germany later on. But yeah, let's see.
Well, as you mentioned, Mats, there are a few uncertainties hanging over some of the Hoffenheim players, and I feel that brings us onto Sandro Wanger, who is being constantly linked with a move to Bayern Munich. What is the situation there? Do we see that actually materializing in January? And what kind of move is it for the player? Do you think it's a good move or possibly a risky one with the World Cup coming up?
That's exactly the point I was thinking of too. The World Cup is coming up, and a player like Sandro Wagner, who is not safe in the squad of Germany, needs the practice, needs the games to show up his quality for Joachim Löw. And of course, in Munich, you have the big Lewandowski, who is doing like 90% of every game, and he wants to maybe play like 80-90 minutes to score as much as he can. And yeah, Sandro Wagner, if it goes normal, he is like the backup. Maybe he gets 10 minutes, 20 minutes when Lewandowski is tired, but Lewandowski is the big striker who is without discussion the number one in Munich. And a player like Sandro Wagner, in my opinion, needs to show his quality on the pitch, and that is not sure in case he is transferred to Munich, which is like, as you can see, safe. Because I asked Julian Nagelsmann on Friday what is with Sandro Wagner and if he comes to the squad again against Dortmund, and he said like, yeah, I don't know, he's trained, but all other players also have the opportunity, and of course Munich didn't want the injured player to come over, so the transfer is already done. But yeah, as I said, it's a tricky situation for Sandro Wagner if he want to go to the World Cup.
Yeah, from what I sense, Sandro Wagner is a similar situation to Mats Hummels' Bryce, that he really wants to go home. He's another Munich boy, born and bred. Coming from a Munich guy myself, it's very hard to let go of the city when you're born and bred here. That we're very attached to this place, and I live abroad, as you know. You do have, people from here have a certain attachment to this place, and that's why people like Sandro Wagner like to come back and take that risk, because it is a very risky move for him to go back. I think the two clubs are actually risking the least amount because Hoffenheim, I think, can replace him, and Bayern are only paying 12 million euros for him. That's very little for a proven striker. I mean, given that Liverpool, for example, a few years ago paid 41 million euros for Andy Carroll, who has when you compare it, has a smaller pedigree. Sandro Wagner is by and large a starting player for the German national team. Andy Carroll, I don't think would ever be that kind of caliber of player. So they're getting a striker on a pretty decent level for almost next to nothing. So Bayern are winning out of this. I think that with the strikers that Hoffenheim have right now, they can replace Sandro Wagner, and they're getting just enough money to bring someone in. So I think the biggest risk is for Sandro Wagner. But on the other hand, when you look at the last time Bayern won the treble, this is something I wrote in the Fußballstadt article, is Jupp Heynckes rotated Mario Mandzukic and Mario Gomez quite frequently. Of course, Mandzukic was the number one guy, but Mario Gomez had a decent amount of playing time because he wanted to have that second option, right? And also having Sandro Wagner means you can play 3-5-2, which is becoming more and more prevalent. So I think there is going to be a decent amount of playing time. The one risk I can see, what happens if Bayern get eliminated on Wednesday and then go out in the first round of the Champions League? Then there's essentially just 17 games left, right? And I'm pretty sure Lewandowski is going to play every single one of them for 90 minutes. And then Sandro Wagner will be sitting on the bench. And I think that is a big risk for him in his national team career.
Without a doubt. If that happens, Lewandowski is fixed for sure. But yeah, Sandro Wagner, I think he's 30 years old, yeah. So he's not on the limited years on his career. He has still something to go. So his goal has to be playing 70, 90 minutes. And yeah, let's see what Jupp Heynckes do with two strikers. But for sure, I think there's no discussion about it. The Lewandowski is number one, and Sandro Wagner has to find his place in the squad or in the first team.
I'm pretty sure Matze that Bayern are quite happy to have him. I think there's no doubt about that. I mean, they needed someone like him, right, as a backup. But I think the big risk really is with Wagner. For sure, yeah. If you see the big teams in Spain like Madrid or Barca or even in England, every striker has one striker behind. Like if he's injured, like we had like Benzema and Morata before he was transferred to Chelsea, but Bayern Munich has only Lewandowski, and of course, Jupp Heynckes always said Thomas Müller can play his position as well, but I think the last games when Lewandowski was out against Madrid in the first game, it showed that when there's no Lewandowski available, then Bayern Munich has a problem in the first row.
I just want to bring Chris into this. Manu's said that, if this deal was to happen, obviously we all highly rate Sandro Wagner on the podcast, but do you see them being able to win the Champions League? Manu has suggested that would be a possibility when they have not just Lewandowski but him up front.
I don't know at the moment. Excuse me. I'm not sure. I'm not feeling the way Bayern are playing at the moment that they could go and win the Champions League. Obviously, they're getting 1-0 wins left, right and centre at the moment. I mean, is that going to be categorised how they're going to play later on in the season? Not so sure. They've not been overwhelming in the Champions League. They had a really good result against PSG, but I think that was based on more of the result in Paris than anything else. And I don't really know if they've got what it takes to go all the way. Maybe they can, if they can win on Wednesday, they will probably be favourites to win the Pokal, and they've got an unassailable lead in the Bundesliga, I think, at the moment. But I don't quite think Bayern are ready to win the Champions League at the moment. Although I think it would be a great achievement if they did. I just don't feel that they are ready. But saying that, Bryce, it's the draw that makes it. If you can be, one of the least favoured sides in the competition and get a good draw and go all the way to the final. And if you can get to the final, it is just a one-off 90-minute game. Anybody can win it. So I'm not sure if they can win. I don't know if Sandro Wagner would take the risk, but then he's got to look on the other side. Is he going to get a guaranteed start if he's to go to Russia? I'd probably argue not. That Timo Werner is head and shoulders, the best German striker in the game at the moment. So, and he is 30, and Manu said he wants to go home. It might be the right move for him personally, and to see, not his days out as going out to pasture at Bayern, but he's 30 years old. It'd probably be his last move you'd expect to get 3 or 4 seasons of play out there. And, he is a very good player. We saw early on in last season, what a good player he was. He went off the boil a little bit, but then he's going to have a lot more quality behind him to feed him in. And that's no disrespect to Hoffenheim, but, Bayern have a lot more quality in depth. And if they've got someone like Sandro Wagner, you can see what he can do. For instance, look at the goal Thomas Muller scored on Saturday. 1 chance, 1 goal. That's the sort of thing that Sandro Wagner could do. He could come off the bench and do that. Is he going to be happy doing that?
Mats, to go back to you, you mentioned earlier that Mark Uth is another player that's thinking about his future at Hoffenheim. I would imagine if Wagner was to leave, surely Hoffenheim would say, I'm sorry, buddy, but you're not going anywhere.
If you talk about the winter transfer period, I'm absolutely with you, because when Wagner goes there, you need someone for the first line. You have Mark Uth, you have Serge Gnabry. I think Adam Scholloy is another striker, but he's not like on top level as Mark Uth and Gnabry are. But the contract from Mark Uth is running out in summer, so Hoffenheim has to, when they want to make money off Mark Uth, they have to sell him now. But I think that's not going to happen. I talked with Mark Uth, I think, on last Sunday. What is about his interest in moving to Schalke, and he just said there's nothing to say about it, and when something is clear, I will talk to you again. So I think there is something going on with Mark Uth and Schalke, and also Gladbach and Dortmund are interested in him, but it's not fixed yet. And Mark Uth is a player who knows to take the right step in his career. He's a Cologne guy, but he had to move away from Cologne when Cologne had a big crisis. Then he goes to Dutch, to Heerenveen, and then he had the big strikers like before him in the squad, and he changes again. But in the end, he was successful, and he scored a lot of goals in the Dutch league. And then he knew when it was the right step to move to Hoffenheim. And I think he also knows that now he has a big opportunity to take the next big step. And I think that's going to be in summer.
Although Matze, you have to be also fair and say that he almost did move to Köln in the summer. And that would have been a terrible move.
Yeah, there was the interest of Köln because they had to give away Anthony Modeste for big money. But as you see, the sportive situation of Cologne right now, it was a big hole now in the first line because nobody can replace Anthony Modeste. But Mark Uth was not accepted. Hoffenheim did not accept Mark Uth to go away. And I think at the end for both sides it was so for Hoffenheim and for Mark Uth it was the good deal to stay.
Yeah, he definitely dodged a bullet, I think, to use that phrase, because I don't think Mark Uth would have made a huge difference in Köln's situation right now. And you basically, instead of being in what is a pretty good story still in Hoffenheim, you'll be taking part in a not so great story in Köln. And I don't know if, sometimes it's funny how careers work out, because right now Mark Uth he's on everyone's lips. I mean, except with the exception for Bayern, and that's probably because Bayern got their man in Sandro Wagner. Borussia Dortmund are interested, Gladbach are interested, Schalke are interested. These are all sides that could potentially play in the Champions League next season. So, and with the new Champions League modus, which means that all 4 teams from Germany, top 4 teams from Germany, go straight into the group stage without a qualification spot. I mean, Mark Uth is going to play Champions League next year. And that is, that's definitely a good career step. And he probably dodged a bullet in the summer.
Well, guys, I feel we need to just talk ever so slightly about the league table as we are going into the winter break. Chris, at the moment, as we said, we see Bayern Munich sitting 11 points clear at the top of the league. Sure, we wish that was a little tighter, but if we look at the rest of the table, I mean, from second down to eighth, we've got just 4 points separating them, and then 12th down to 17th. 4 points once again separates the sides. It's still been a very interesting and competitive and exciting first half of the season, even though Bayern are, well, quite clear at the top, isn't it?
Yeah, it has. So if you're going to talk about the gap between first and second and the chasing pack, yeah, that's a little disappointing. But the fighting out between second, I mean, you could even say all the way down to 11th, really. Hanover are currently 11th on 23 points. So it takes some for them to get up to fourth. But, technically that's only 5 points behind the Champions League slots. And if you look at the rest of them, so Schalke is currently second, 30, and then there's a clutch of teams on 28 and then a couple on 26. So it's exceptionally tight. It's going to be a really interesting second half of the season. And there was some teams wins by some big margins early on in the campaign that maybe won't get that luxury as we start again in January. So I think it'll be very tight. If you're going to ask me for some sort of crazy prediction, Bryce, I genuinely have no idea. You could see someone like Eintracht jump up into fourth. You could certainly see Hoffenheim getting up there. Schalke have done unbelievably well. Manu tipped Leverkusen to do well early on in the season. Leipzig have been a little disappointing, but you say, well, they're from fifth, but they're 28. They're 28 points, so they're only 2 points behind second. It's exceptionally close. And likewise, it's as it always is every season. It's squeaky bum from 12th down.
Yes, and as you said, Chris, it has been a very interesting and exciting first half of the season. Apart from that little blip at the top, with Bayern being ahead more than we'd actually like. But Manu can be very pleased with his predictions with Leverkusen. They have had a very strong first half of the campaign. And, well, 2 points off, that they could crawl into seconds in the second half. But let's wait and see. It's going to be as interesting as ever. Matt, I'd just like to say thank you very much for coming on here. It's been an absolute pleasure. You've given us loads of information. Is there anything that you would like to draw people's attentions to? Have you got anything coming up? Or where can people find you maybe on social media?
It was a pleasure for me as well, guys. It was very cool to chat with you with all the topics. Yeah, I will start working in February again for my newspaper, and you can find me on Instagram, Born to be Matze, and you can find me on Facebook with my name. Yeah, and I'm curious about all the topics in sports going on, and yeah, it was a pleasure for me.
Well, we'll certainly have to try and get you back on in the second half of the season, Matt. Thank you very much. Chris, what have you got going on this week? You and Manu always have plenty going on, and obviously, where can people find you online?
Bryce, I made an executive decision this week. I'm taking the week off, so I'm going to be doing nothing. Apart from match day images and on the whistle images for Football Grad. Not going to leave Manu in a lurch, don't worry. But if someone wants to follow me on Twitter, please feel free to do so, Chris78 Williams. But bar that, I will be back after Christmas, Bryce.
Lovely, jubbly.
Oh, can I just say as well, by the way, that we should give Manu, we should all give ourselves a pat on the back, but especially Manu, because we have covered 14 out of the 18 teams in the first half of the season. We've been live to cover 14 out of the 18 Bundesliga teams.
Yeah, that's impressive. Yeah, that's very impressive.
That's pretty good going, guys. Well done. Big round of applause to the both of you. But Manu, will you be taking it easy this week, following in Chris's footsteps, or you got a busier one?
I have one final game on Wednesday, the Bayern Dortmund game, of course, at the Allianz Arena. I'm back away from the cushiony warm Sport 1 VIP lounge, back to the rather cold press tribune. But it's going to be a really good game, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I think it's going to be exciting covering it for Football Grad. So yeah, that's my last duty before Christmas, and then taking a couple of days off too. But we'll still have stories on the Football Grad network. There's a couple of transfers being finalized and that sort of thing. So we'll keep you up to date with that kind of stuff. But match reporting will pick up, I guess, in January.
Yeah, that's it, guys. It's never going to be completely silent at the Football Grad Network. There's still going to be plenty of articles coming your way. So make sure to follow on Twitter at Football Grad Live for all those updates and new articles. Guys, if you've liked the podcast, please head over to iTunes and leave us a few comments, or maybe a positive review or ranking. We'd really appreciate that. I've been your host, Bryce Dunn. You can find me on Twitter as Bryce Dunn 11. And apart from that, thank you as always for tuning in, and auf Wiedersehen.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen, dich abzuholen.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.